If Niccolo Machiavelli were alive today, he wouldn't be writing books. He wouldn't be tweeting motivational quotes. He wouldn't be live on podcasts or uploading thought pieces to YouTube. No, he'd be behind the scenes pulling strings so subtly you'd swear it was destiny. In a world obsessed with being seen, Machiavelli would win by being invisible. And in this video, I'm going to walk you through exactly how he'd do it, not through quotes, but through doctrine. 21 psychological rules for complete control, all rooted in what Machiavelli would actually do if he were living in our modern world. Let's start with Rule 1. Always let them underestimate you. Machiavelli knew that power is safest when no one sees it coming. Today, everyone's in a rush to prove themselves, flashing credentials, showing off achievements, talking over each other, just to be the smartest person in the room. But if Machiavelli were here, he wouldn't walk in loud. He'd walk in last. He'd observe first, speak when no one expects him to, and say what no one else dares to say. And in doing so, he'd own the room without even being noticed. At least not until it's too late. Let them think you're quiet. Let them think you're harmless. Let them think you're small. Because when they believe you're not a threat, they expose everything. And that's when you strike from a position they never prepared for. Rule 2, charm is more dangerous than truth. In a hyper-connected, image-obsessed society, truth doesn't spread. Perception does. Machiavelli understood that everyone sees what you appear to be. Very few ever see who you actually are. So he wouldn't waste time proving his integrity. He'd focus on building illusion. He'd smile in boardrooms while planting seeds of misdirection. He'd charm his enemies, feed them false confidence, and disarm them through likability. That's the play, not to be good, but to be believed as good. You don't have to be honest. You have to be persuasive. Don't correct how people see you use it. Let them crown you the hero while you quietly rewrite the ending. Rule 3. Create ambiguity on purpose. Most people fight to be understood. Machiavelli would do the opposite. He'd leave people guessing. Cold one day, generous the next, silent then intense. Not because he's confused, because they are. Confusion creates obsession. Obsession creates focus. Focus creates influence. When people can't define you, they study you. They overanalyze every word. They read too much into your silence. They start orbiting your mystery, trying to solve a puzzle they were never meant to solve. And that's where the power lives. You stop being a person and become a fixation. So stop over-explaining. Stop clarifying your intentions. Speak in riddles. Smile when they ask questions you have no intention of answering. Because confusion breeds curiosity, and curiosity that becomes gravity. Rule 4. Make people explain themselves to you. Machiavelli knew the person who asks the questions holds the frame. So instead of oversharing, he'd stay quiet, then drop one surgical question. Why do you think that? What makes you say that? Is that how you see it? And suddenly the spotlight's on them. They're the ones scrambling. They're the ones revealing too much. When you ask calmly, people overreact. When you're unreadable, they start to talk more, just to fill the silence. That's where they slip up. That's when their insecurities leak out. Let people explain themselves to death. Rule 5. Be the calmest person in the room. Energy is contagious, and the most composed person always dominates the emotional tempo. While others escalate, Machiavelli would stay still. While others argue, he'd observe. People mistake calmness for weakness until they realize it's control. The loudest one loses credibility, the one who keeps their voice steady while everyone else spirals. That's the person everyone starts to listen to. Chaos obeys stillness. Rule 6. Don't fix your reputation, let it distort. When people misunderstand you, the average response is to clarify, explain, repair the narrative. Machiavelli wouldn't. He'd let it twist. Why? Because misunderstanding creates distance, and distance is power. When people don't know how to define you, they either respect you or fear you. But they don't dismiss you. That's the edge. That's the aura. You become something larger than yourself, not because you're loud, but because you're hard to grasp. Rule 7. Say less than necessary. Not everything needs your reaction. Not every message needs a reply. Not every slight needs a comeback. Machiavelli would train himself to master the pause, to master discomfort, to let silence stretch so long that people start second-guessing themselves. And when he did speak, every word would feel deliberate, weighted, final. Don't rush to fill gaps. Gaps are powerful. Gaps make people lean in. Rule 8. Never reveal your full plan. Most people overshare because they crave validation. They want people to know what they're working on. Machiavelli wouldn't give anyone that leverage. He'd reveal just enough to keep interest alive and nothing more. When people don't know what you're building, they can't block it. When they don't know your next move, they can't stop it. Mystery isn't just dramatic, it's strategic. Rule 9. Be selectively inconsistent. Predictability is comfortable, but unpredictability keeps people on edge. One day you're warm, the next distant. One week you say yes, the next you say nothing. You're not flaky, you're strategic. You teach people not to assume, not to get lazy, not to put you in a box. Machiavelli wouldn't be easy to read, and that's why he'd be impossible to control. When you're unreadable, they adjust. When you're predictable, they exploit. Rule 10. Let others feel like they're winning. Machiavelli wouldn't fight every battle. He'd let others believe they've won just enough to drop their guard. He'd compliment them when it serves him, agree with them when it doesn't cost him. And while they're celebrating imaginary victories, he's already moved 3 steps ahead. You don't need credit, you need control. And control often comes by making people feel comfortable while you tighten the frame around them. Rule 11. Never argue with emotion. Emotion muddies clarity. Logic gets lost in noise. So when someone lashes out or tries to provoke you, Machiavelli would meet it with stillness. No rebuttal, just a look, just a pause, just one line. You seem upset. That's it, nothing else. Why? Because it flips the mirror. It makes the other person feel exposed. It turns their outburst into self-doubt. The calmer you stay, the louder their instability becomes. And the room always notices. Rule 12. Make your presence scarce. The more people see you, the more they take you for granted. Machiavelli would not be everywhere. He'd make himself rare, elusive. And when he did show up, it would mean something. Every appearance would feel like an event. Scarcity creates value. Don't be constantly accessible. Be periodically unforgettable. Rule 13, reverse the frame. When someone attacks you, most people defend. Machiavelli wouldn't. He'd reframe. Turn the accusation into a reflection. You're arrogant. Interesting. What made you feel that way? You're cold. Or maybe you expected warmth you didn't earn. Suddenly, you're not the one being questioned. They are. And in that shift, power moves. Rule 14, elevate by detachment. The world trains you to react fast emotionally publicly. Machiavelli would train himself to observe without needing to engage. Someone insults you, he'd walk away. Someone challenges him, he'd smile. Because nothing terrifies people more than someone who's immune to their chaos. When you detach, you're not cold, you're untouchable. Rule 15. Own your mystery. Machiavelli wouldn't try to be relatable. He'd embrace the gap. People would ask questions and he'd offer riddles. People would expect patterns and he'd break them. Not to confuse, but to build gravity. People don't follow those they fully understand. They follow what they can't quite figure out. Because mystery isn't emptiness, it's depth. And people fall into depth when it's real. Rule 16. Leave them guessing after every interaction. After talking to Machiavelli, you wouldn't walk away certain. You'd replay the conversation. Wonder if he agreed with you. Question whether he was challenging you. That's the point. Confusion is mental glue. And the people who confuse you linger in your mind longer than the ones who explain everything. Don't aim to be understood. Aim to be unforgettable. Rule 17. Never respond immediately. In a world that rewards speed, Machiavelli would reward timing. He wouldn't reply to messages right away, wouldn't rush into decisions, wouldn't speak just to fill the silence. Why? Because urgency is often a trick, a pressure tactic to make you act before you think. But when you pause, you control the pace. You make others wait, and waiting breeds anticipation. Waiting creates tension, and tension is leverage. Rule 18, use compliments as weapons. Machiavelli wouldn't flatter. He'd surgically compliment to disarm, to confuse, or to reposition someone. "You're always so bold, I admire that," said to the most impulsive person in the room. "I know you value loyalty," said to the one who's quietly betraying you. Every compliment would carry a second meaning, a pressure, a mirror. Because flattery, when used sparingly, doesn't build trust, it builds leverage. Rule 19. Create psychological debt. Machiavelli would do small favors, extend small kindnesses, offer small wins, not because he's generous, but because he understands reciprocity. People don't forget who helped them when they were uncertain. Even more so, they don't forget who didn't. He'd give selectively, strategically, and once given, he'd never bring it up, because the silence makes the debt heavier. Rule 20, never outshine publicly. Most people want credit. Machiavelli would avoid the spotlight. He'd let others feel like the star while he guided the narrative from behind. Why? Because public praise creates private resentment, and resentment becomes sabotage. Machiavelli would let others have the glory so he could keep the power. Rule 21. Train for composure under pressure. This is the core of everything. Anyone can act calculated when things are easy. But the moment tension rises, most people slip, they get reactive, defensive, emotional. Machiavelli would train himself differently, to breathe under fire, to pause mid-conflict, to smile while being attacked. Not because it's natural, but because it's power. When you're calm, you see more. When you see more, you win more. And the one who controls their emotions controls the room. So what's the bigger picture here? It's not about becoming cold or manipulative. It's about reclaiming control. In a world addicted to reaction, Machiavelli would move with intention. While others chased validation, he'd chase leverage. While others tried to be liked, he'd make sure he was respected. While others talked, he watched. And when he finally spoke, the room went silent. These rules, they're not tricks. They're not shortcuts. They're tools for power, for clarity, for reclaiming control of your name, your space, and your mind. You don't have to use all 21, but even 3 of them mastered will change the way the world responds to you. Because once you stop explaining yourself, you start defining yourself. And that's when everything shifts. Let's go deeper into what this actually looks like, not just in theory, but in everyday life. Imagine you're in a meeting and someone challenges your idea. Most people would jump in, explain themselves, try to clarify. But Machiavelli, he'd pause, let the silence linger, let the other person keep talking. Because the more they talk, the more likely they'll reveal their own uncertainty. And when he finally responds, it's not to defend, it's to redirect. A simple, interesting, what's your alternative? Now the burden's back on them. No defense, no emotional reaction, just stillness and control. This is how you train to be composed. You pause, you redirect. You never get dragged into someone else's storm. Or let's say someone throws shade at you in a social setting. Most people laugh awkwardly, try to recover, maybe throw shade back. Not you. You lean back, give a slight smile or no expression at all, and you say noted, or even better, say nothing. That silence will echo longer than any comeback. Because the goal is not to win the moment, it's to win the perception. Let them look loud. Let them look emotional. You look immovable, and people remember that. Think about digital communication. Someone sends a passive-aggressive message. Do you explain no? You wait, maybe you don't respond at all. Or you reply 24 hours later with a single sentence, appreciate the feedback. Nothing more. Let them spiral on their own. That's the modern Machiavellian play presence without explanation. Because every unnecessary word you say puts you on the defensive, and the more defensive you get, the more predictable you become. And once people can predict you, they can control you. That's why composure isn't just about being calm, it's about being unreadable. Your stillness becomes mystery, your timing becomes strategy, and your silence becomes narrative. Remember this, people don't respect what they understand fully. They respect what they can't quite define. That's why a little mystery will get you further than a lot of clarity. Don't rush to be transparent. Don't be obsessed with being understood. Be obsessed with being undeniable. And to do that, you have to train your stillness. You have to let people talk too much while you say just enough. You have to let them interpret your silence however they want, because their interpretation reveals more about them than about you. That's the game. You're not here to explain. You're here to watch, to wait, and then to move. Now let's talk about unpredictability, one of Machiavelli's most underused weapons. People crave consistency. They want to put you in a box label you make you manageable. But if you're always consistent, you're always expected. And when you're expected, you're easy to plan for easy to beat. Machiavelli would make sure no one ever quite knew what to expect. One day you're generous and kind, the next distant and quiet. Not because you're moody, but because you don't give people the pattern they're searching for. Unpredictability becomes your armor. It keeps people from getting too comfortable. It forces them to stay alert, to never assume they know where they stand with you. That's power. Because the moment people start assuming your behavior, they start relaxing their defenses. And relaxed people are sloppy. You don't need to be chaotic, just slightly offbeat. Enough to keep people paying attention. Enough to remind them you're not a machine. You're a force. Let's say you usually respond to messages instantly. One day you wait. Another day you respond immediately but say very little. Another you disappear. That variation creates presence. It keeps people wondering, and that wondering becomes energy. Energy you now control. It's the same with generosity. Be kind when it serves the moment. Withhold when it doesn't. Give freely once, then vanish. People don't remember what they receive consistently. They remember the gift that came unexpectedly. That memory lingers. That emotion sticks. You leave a mark not by being stable, but by being unforgettable. And here's the twist: unpredictable people are rarely disrespected. Why? Because people can't tell what might trigger you. That uncertainty becomes caution. That caution becomes respect. You don't have to be dangerous. You just have to make people unsure of what you'll do. That possibility is enough. Machiavelli would never let someone feel completely safe in assuming his next move. He'd speak in layers, act with dual meaning. And when people thought they had him figured out, he'd change the rhythm. Because in the end, rhythm is control. When they dance to your beat, even if they don't know it, you're winning. So be hard to pin down. Be slightly off. Smile when they expect silence. Stay silent when they expect an answer. Give when they least deserve it. Pull back when they need you most. Not to play games, but to write the rules. Your unpredictability is not confusion. It's choreography. And once you learn to lead the dance, no one can outstep you. Let's shift to something most people overlook: the power of limited access. We live in a world of oversharing, constant availability, endless connection. But Machiavelli, he'd be rare, not absent rare. Scarcity creates value. Think about the last time someone pulled away slightly, didn't reply right away, wasn't at every event, didn't post for a while. You noticed, you thought about it, you felt it. And that's the point. People respect what they can't always have. If you're constantly accessible, your energy becomes common. But if you limit access suddenly, every appearance, every reply, every conversation feels significant. Machiavelli would use that. He'd say no to things most people chase: invitations, attention, noise. Not because he's aloof, but because every time he does say yes, it means something. So instead of trying to be everywhere, try being missed. Instead of constantly proving your value, let your absence prove it for you. Pull back. Watch how the silence amplifies your presence. This applies to conversation too. You don't need to share everything you think. You don't need to constantly contribute. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing while others overextend themselves. When people can't predict what you'll say when you'll speak, or whether you'll respond at all, they pay closer attention. You've created gravity not through volume, but through silence and precision. This also reshapes how people perceive your time. When you're always available, your time seems cheap. When you protect your time, when you respond on your terms, meet only with purpose, speak. When it matters, your time becomes expensive. And expensive time gets treated differently. People show up sharper, speak with more intention, respect your energy more deeply. That's psychological economics. Make your time feel rare, and people will treat it like gold. Machiavelli would go further. He'd let others talk more in every interaction, not just to gather intel, but to create a dynamic where others feel exposed, not him. When someone talks too much, they start revealing things they didn't mean to. They show their insecurities, their motivations, their fears. Meanwhile, the one who speaks less stays in control, enigmatic, observant, powerful. So don't just protect your time, protect your words, protect your presence, and watch what happens when people realize they can't access you whenever they want. They start adjusting, they start leaning in. Because we don't chase what's easy to reach, we chase what we fear we might lose. You don't need to be loud, you need to be missed. Now let's close with the most Machiavellian move of all, doing nothing on purpose. See, most people can't sit in stillness. They feel the need to respond, to react, to fix, to correct, to defend. But Machiavelli, he'd wait. Let others expose themselves. Let chaos unfold. Let noise create confusion, and then move once the dust settles. Doing nothing isn't weakness, it's discipline, it's patience. It's the understanding that silence isn't absence, it's tension. And tension bends the room toward whoever can hold it longest. So you stay still while others scramble. You pause while others panic. You let them wear themselves out trying to pull you into their storm, and when they're tired, distracted, unraveling, that's when you act. And here's what makes it even more powerful: by doing nothing, you become the mirror. You reflect everyone else's behavior. Their insecurity, their fear, their desperation, it all shows. And you don't have to say a word. People project onto you whatever's in their own mind. And that's when silence turns into strategy. Think of it like this: words are signals, but silence is a screen. People fill it with their own meaning. Some will fear you, some will admire you, some will resent you. But all of them will think about you longer than they would if you just explained yourself. So what does this all mean? It means stop playing defense. Stop over-explaining. Stop correcting every misunderstanding. Let people be wrong about you. Let them wonder. Let them talk. While you build, while you position, while you observe. Because your power is not in being liked. Your power is in being unshakable. The person who doesn't need to be understood becomes untouchable. The one who says less gets heard more. The one who disappears gets chased. The one who holds silence holds control. And once you understand that, you start living differently. You start choosing stillness over reaction, mystery over exposure, composure over performance. And in doing that, you don't just shift how others treat you, you shift who you become. That's the final rule Machiavelli would live by today: let the world react, you stay rooted. And in a world obsessed with attention, be the one thing no one can look away from, even if they can't figure out why. You don't have to be understood to be powerful. You just have to be undeniable, quietly, precisely, relentlessly.